So the purpose of going through the rays now one by one is basically to look at how can you recognize your ray on the personality level, that is how you are and the way you are behaving, how you deal with at the place of your work, partnership, etc. And personally, I find it's a very good idea to know more about your ray so that you do not expect of yourself to change in a way which is not you. And so that your partner or your friends do not expect of you to be totally different from what you are. I've had several talks with people, especially partners, who want to change the other partner. And I've really needed to defend some people in those partnerships and say, what your partner wants of you is not you. You need to realize who you are based on your ray, based on your path, etc. Because you can change some superficial parts, but you can't just change your core, like your ray. So that's why it's a good idea, but also it's a good idea to recognize the rays, the main characteristics in other people, so that you don't want like a fifth ray partner to be like a fourth ray partner. It's impossible. If you're married to a fifth ray, you are married to a fifth ray. So you understand what I mean? Don't try to change the fifth ray to a fourth ray. It will give a lot of problems for both of you. So the transformation, the evolution, is still within some structure, which is based on our path, on our ray structures, etc. So let's start with ray number 1. What I've done here on the whiteboard is to look at each ray has a pleasure, a joy. What do ray number 1 enjoy the most? Power. But we often think that power is power to overpower other people, to subdue other people, suppress other people, but that's not the idea. You can have a pure first ray personality or soul-infused personality which doesn't want to have power over anybody, but who just have a very strong fire of direction, of a pioneering spirit, fiery soul, which is nourished by the flow of power. You simply enjoy this flow of power and you create through this flow of power. Then such power can be used in so many directions, but the key is this flow of power, which gives a lot of strength, a lot of perseverance, a lot of actually self-confidence. Very few first-rate people do not have self-confidence. And I've often admired the way of very little fear. They can say, a lot of self-confidence and very little fear. So they can confront the world, they can confront other people, but also they can confront some obstacles which for other people would be no way. But a first-rate person has a daring of taking up challenges and living with them. One first-rate person whom I know, he said the other day something funny, like we were discussing, like in the Muslim world, who should incarnate there the next time? And most people said, no. And he said, oh, it's nothing. You just incarnate there and then you are hung, or you are slain, or you are whipped, or you are... It doesn't matter. So he basically said, with the first ray, it doesn't matter. You're used to sacrifice. You're used to being on the front line when something new is happening on the earth. So that's the first way. We will be aware that fairly few people are pure first-rate types. Of course, we have Napoleon, we have a Churchill, etc. But most big egos, even suppressing dictators, are not first way. They are just big egos on the personality level. Maybe they are the first way on a soul level, which pushes their ego in a specific direction. But most big egos, they are still fairly primitive. First way people on the personality level tend to be advanced people on the spiritual path, because you can't incarnate the first way in the personality level until you are on the path, usually have passed the first initiation. So usually they are grandiose, great vision, great world, but even after the first initiation, of course, there can be many distortions, there can be power games, etc., etc. But for all of them, you will find their power game is great. It's a huge world. And we have this fiery drive and a lot of self-confidence. Sometimes I will refer to the paper. When on the website you can print it out with the rays, ray 1, 2, and 3, which are on the one paper, and then ray 4, 5, 6, 7 on the next paper. I've found that the descriptions of the rays here are very condensed, so you can take each sentence and ponder on that. So for the first ray, for example, how are you as a human being? First ray person is willing to break conventions. They do what they find is right, and they do it. Not occupied by detail. The next part of the ray, I ask, how are you as a partner? If you marry a first ray person, just be aware your world will never be the same. Because the first ray person tends to not be satisfied with any nitty-gritty, not be satisfied with a little family life, not be satisfied with a little house. Everything should be great, extended, expansive, traveling around the world, being engaged in politics or whatever. So if you want to have, shouldn't we just sit down, have a relaxed weekend? Then the first ray person, after 2 hours of really trying to be relaxed in the family life,
so I put glue on the chair.
Suddenly, hey, what are you thinking about? Oh, I'm just planning this or that, or etc. So there's too much fire. First ray has a lot of fire. Too much fire, too much drive. But of course it can be in any directions. If it is on the material level, it's directed, it's goal-oriented, it's something which can be manifested. If on the inner levels, it's fiery expansion, maybe solar vibration.
Just to add the other side of the coin of the same puzzle, that since the will is key and will of sacrifice, also first ray person, when he or she is advanced, she and he has much need to surrender to the will, because he wants to be naturally aligned with the will. So in the other way, not only power but also surrender to this will of sacrifice, I think, is when there is a soul alignment.
You may ask about a first ray person when they are on the path, and especially if their direction turns more towards inner world or spiritual work. How do they do it? Do they have love? And if we look at Alice Bailey description, then it's love but through the will. So the main line of evolution is absorbing the will of God. So first it's their own will, it becomes the will of God, and then through the will of God, the heart sets on fire. So the deepest wish of a first-rate person is to, I wouldn't call it surrender to the will when you come very deep, but to be the will. So, yeah. So, yeah. So, you allow God to anchor some vibration, some part of the plan, some direction through you, and you become that. Yeah. If we look a little more of first-rate type in the job, they will tend to be the ones in power. They will tend to be the ones who take initiative, and they are not so much listeners. They are more talkers. So it's difficult to have a conversation. What do you think? And what do you think? And etc. They are more like this drive. It pushes forward, and the tendency is that other people listen. I've asked, how is your home decorated? Because the first way... It isn't decorated. I found the first-way people I know, they are not material. They don't have material values. We should own this, we should own that. Because the will also can skip things. It can own, it can skip. And not too much nitty-gritty. If they have a good economy, quality. But it's not so important, because the world of having this furniture or that can be too small. I've written here that they are not occupied with coziness. Coziness can be imprisonment. So sometimes it's the opposite of coziness. Or, well, let's take 1 hour of coziness, and now... So first-rate types are not a lot, but they are used as pioneers in all kinds of fields. But it can be visible fields, it can also be invisible fields. And the invisible field tends to be connecting spirit and matter. Because first ray has a special entrance into matter. It can get deeper into matter than any of the other rays. I ask about, how is a first ray person shopping? They don't shop. If they can find anybody else to shop. Or they tend to shop fairly speedily, juk, 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 juk. Again, being not materialistic. Go directly after what they want, quick to decide. It's not stingy. That means they're not occupied with small money. They are not so much, do we have money enough? And they just buy what they need to buy, and then if they have a fifth-rate partner, the fifth-rate partner has the problem. How do we now, etc., etc. So, we have also a paragraph about typical distortions and the dweller on the threshold. Main distortion I've found is over self-confidence. Too much confidence that I'm right. Because this energy of the first ray is like a drive. You can't give way to the drive, be one with the drive, and all that at the same time doubt that you are right. So a first ray person tends to say, I am right, per definition.
Right. You cannot at the same time doubt you are not right.
Yeah. So you don't doubt that you are right, I am right. And we see that all over the place. It's difficult to discuss with them. And sometimes life proves that they are not right. And then I found that they don't succumb to, what a pity, and guilt, and blah, 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 blah. They say, okay, align with the will of God, and just readjust, and say, okay, I've learned, on we go. one of those instances with one of my friends, she made a lot of mistakes on the spiritual field. It hurt a lot of people. And then she had to realize what had happened. So she realized, and then she said to me, I have realized it all, and now it's redeemed. On we go. I said, what? Shouldn't you pay back some karma? shouldn't you go through a deep process of humility and self-surrender? But it's not her style. And I've found that with many first-rate people, they don't go through those humility processes. And probably they can do without, if they stay alert. Or they make mistakes again, but they don't care so much about mistakes. They say, okay, that was a mistake. I change it, and then we continue. So there is a little warrior, war-making, pioneering, continue. And they never nearly admit when they are wrong. So let's close our eyes and just shortly meditate on this ray. Imagine that you have a strong inflow of ray number 1, either as a personality ray or a soul ray. In other ways, how strong is your ray number 1 flowing in you? A sense of focused, fire in the head, in the heart, even in your body. Directiveness, grand vision. No fear. Walk forward. Bring heaven into earth. Fire turning into expansion. Yes, we can. Fire turning into power, the power of God, the power of the One Spirit. Nothing is impossible. Power turning into drive. Sensing I'm one with universal spirit, extending into humanity and earth. I'm anchoring this power. Nothing can stop this power from fulfilling its purpose. And I surrender to the will of universal spirit, which is about to transform the world. And also look at the details described. To which degree can you recognize the first ray expressed through your personality? the attunement is over. And we look at the second ray. You can open your eyes. The second ray is a very, very different ray from ray 1. Second ray is also much more common, especially on soul level, but also on personality level. Generally, it is said that you need to pass the first initiation before your personality as such can be on the second ray. However, there can be second ray influence in you from the soul, or maybe the mental body is on the second ray, or the astral body is on the second ray. So, typical second ray person. Philosophical, lofty in ideas, idealistic, likes to read and maybe talk about love and wisdom. It is a soft ray. Just be aware that the second ray of the personality tends to lift you above emotions. It has an upward drive, makes you transpersonal. So second-ray people are not very emotional generally. The most emotional people, that's ray number 4 and 6. So second-ray emotions or second-ray soft ray, it's you're sensitive and you are somewhat lean back. You're not so much in the forefront. You are peaceful and you are listening to other people, unlike the ray number 1. You are empathetic, but it's not so much self-sacrifice. So the tendency for most second-ray people is that the love is rather passive love. Of course, there are exceptions, people on the Christ path who have a burning love. The most burning love is actually the 6th ray. Second-ray people, okay, they burn, they can burn, the heart can burn, but the tendency is a little leaned back. And then I found that all those people, second-ray people who talk about love, what do I see they do? They sit in their chair, they sit at home, they study their books, they don't go out in the world to alleviate suffering, not very much. It's more 6th-ray people, or it's 4th-ray 1 people. Second-ray people, they dream about love. I think it's the most dreaming ray of them all. And of course with many exceptions, but this is a tendency. One strong second-ray person whom Yvonne and I know, he loves to study spiritual books, he loved to talk about love, but basically he said to me, you are all wrong. Love should just be sitting and spreading love. You are running around and you are traveling around, but that's not the idea. You should sit and be open to the soul flow and just spread love. This person, he at a certain time, he was pretty close, and I found that other people got annoyed that, hey, why are you not doing anything? And he said, all this doing, that's a mistake. So that was typical second-ray answers. Friendly, peaceful, a very good partner. Just don't expect too much warm feelings coming back to you if you have a second-ray partner. It can be, especially if the person is deeply on the heart path, and especially if you add some 6th-ray. One in my family was married with a typical second-ray person who was 10,000 of books on spiritual subjects. 100 Buddhas, literally, from this size to this size, etc., etc. And she said to me, look, my husband is studying about love all the time. He's quoting all these philosophers. He has all those Buddhas, but he never gives me a hug. He never this, he never this, he never this. She was deeply frustrated.
He never goes to bed with her.
So the love couldn't really enter into the physical partnership, the emotional level, etc., etc., etc. And actually, when he passed away a few years ago, Yvonne followed him on the inner level. So we saw immediately he went to a Buddhist, like a temple on the inner levels, and continued reading books. And he said, look, where I am now, I can take a book from the shelf in this Buddhist temple, and immediately it opens itself. Within few seconds, I have absorbed all the philosophy which is in that book. So I asked him, well, now look back on your married life. It appeared to be, as I had expected, he used to be incarnated in the East, and now he dared be incarnated in the West and also be married. An old monk for 10,000 of years, being monk, being married, and with this very strong second ray. And he said something like, well, I'm not very happy about it, and but I couldn't do anything about it. It's just how I was. And so I asked him, would you like to incarnate again and be married? He said, it will not be in the beginning. I will really need to find out if I can, because he could manage. He stayed in his second ray in a home, but the wife didn't manage very well. So he said, could I expose another person to that? So now he used to be a monk, which made that second ray type even stronger. Just be aware that second ray has a very strong tendency of leaning back, being transpersonal, inner freedom, balancing, and not be too much involved in the world. Because if I get into the world, how can I keep my balance of love wisdom? How can I keep all my ideals? I'm a peaceful man, ahimsa, non-violence, loving everyone. Because if I get too much into the world, I get tension, and maybe I discover I don't love everyone. So I would rather stay where I can keep this philosophy and those ideals. Now, of course, this description is the typical second ray. Then there are many combinations, and what have you got in your astral body and your mental body, etc. I've described a typical second ray in a place of work. They are liked by everyone. They are peaceful, and they have usually also a loving magnetism. But they are slow. Slow. Because they need to have themselves, like, if I speed up too much, gear number 2, 3, 4, I have lost myself. So I must go back and find myself. And then, if I'm sufficiently slow, I still have the energy. And then I can do my work. Do you understand the type? Good. So, still we have all the combinations, so this typical is not for all second ray, but that's still very much a second ray in itself. Then again, we have two directions of the second ray. One is more in the wisdom inclination. I think this uncle of mine, he was more in the wisdom inclination. Then we have some in the heart direction. If the heart direction also has some fire from the sixth ray, fire from the first ray, and this Christ connection or similar, then of course second ray will be displayed differently.
I experienced the second ray love as more like, could be said, monadic love. It's not the personal love, and it's therefore it seems like being a little transparent because it doesn't involve in the personal affairs, but it is still powerful love in impersonal way. So probably best thing a second ray can do is to meditate if one is able to align with that monadic love and the deep wisdom.
Yeah, and then the love is given to the whole, to the planetary life or to a group, or there's a deep love for God also. So it's in the surrendering to the love of God, you partake in the flow of the love of God. And again, a little different to, is it the Christ line or the Buddha line? How is the home for a second ray person? Beautiful. Just remember this little story with the person with the 100 Buddha heads and statues and arts, etc. There can be the typical library person who gathers wisdom around is a second ray person. Emphasizes life, uplifting music, color, is sensitive to vibration, so it will not be a sterile home. It will be a home full of like upliftment. Shopping, slow shopper, buys qualities, sits and stands, is nearly meditating over what to buy, but still is not materialistic. But so it's just a way of, well, now we are here, and then slowly you go through the shop, and could be even be a little absent-minded. That could be one of the reasons why it takes some time. Biodynamic food, quality rather than quantity. Then we have the difficulties, the challenges or distortions of a second ray. And what you can see in the paper is mainly that they tend to be a little backwards so that they don't see their faults or they don't see what other people see, because in their own point of view they are pretty good. It's so important for them to stay in this calmness and love wisdom that they're not so keen on looking at what is their subconscious, do they have other sides, which maybe other people do see. In the bottom of that paragraph we have the deity, that's a dweller on the threshold, which actually could be too much peace, so that peace can resist evolution. Peace can resist that you go through fire, you go through crucifixion and etc., or self-sacrifice in order to help humanity or in order to pass the next initiation. That's the idea of a spiritual car park. So who are mostly on those parks you develop? You go into a peaceful area in which there is no progress. Probably the second ray has most of those parkings. Oh yes, it's Yvonne who says some of our second ray friends, they don't want to buy too much. They don't want to have a big house because a big house is a lot of economy. Keep it simple, and then there are not so many obligations to economy, and they are not stressed by economy.
To work.
And they don't need to work as much. I think most second-rate people, they would say, I would find a solution of only needing to work 20 hours. Then I will meditate and I will spread light and love. Let's meditate on or tune with ray number 2.
Morten Lybert, var han ikke anden stråle? Ja, det synes jeg.
We feel our heart. Feel our heart connected with the center of the head. Sense the love wisdom descending from the second ray. Being. Transpersonal existence. Resting in inner peace, love, wisdom, presence. Be absorbed into something deeper than the outer world. Equilibrium. Equanimity. Peace of mind, balance of mind. Encompassing heart. Acceptance. A great acceptance which is undisturbed of the frictions of the world. Still giving love and light to the world, but from a distance. And you observe, I can live according to these ideals. If the level of frictions in my personal life are not too high, but also I must learn to bring this equilibrium, this inner balance with me in my family life, when I'm at my job, when I meet other people. It's a big challenge, but that's my training. So that I can remain an open door for the love, wisdom, and the inner balance. To vibrate in humanity through being. I'm an open door via presence, being. How deeply are you absorbed into the second ray? How deeply is the second ray expressed in the core of your being? Now look at your everyday life. How many of these tendencies and qualities do you recognize in your everyday life? Your relations to partner, family, friends, people around. How much activity and busyness you can take before the inner equilibrium is too disturbed. Look at the values of your life, your way of shopping, your home, your food. To which degree do you find the second ray embodied in you as a personality? Now the attunement is over, and we shift to ray number 3. Ray number 3 in some way resembles ray number 2, also keen on reading, philosophy, but the focus is different. And actually, the best teachers, at least in philosophy and spirituality, are ray 2 and ray 3. Ray 3 is more alert in the physical, focused in the mind. Just be aware of the difference between ray 5 mind and ray 3 mind. Ray 3 mind is for the overview. Ray 5 mind is more for the focused penetration into the depths. We tend to say the best scientist is a combination of ray 3 and ray 5. With ray 3, you get the good ideas, you have a lofty mind, you get the overview. With ray 5, you can concentrate, focus, penetrate, and persevere. If a ray 3 is a scientist, if it doesn't give result within a year, you skip it. So I think most Nobel Prize winners within science are ray 5, because you can see from their life they have persevered for 20 years very often until their breakthrough. And the ray 3 would tend to give up after 1 or 2 years, because it needs to be innovative. Ray 3 tends to be like the fluid swifting from one to another, not too much focus for too long a time, and likes innovation, renewal, new ways. The innovative minds out of all the rays, I would say, is mostly in ray 3. Full of ideas, somewhat restless, has a possibility of considering many options, which again can mean you have a difficulty to make a decision. And you like to conversate, you like to talk, but just to give one example, in an earlier spiritual group, there were a number of ray 3 people, ray 3 minds. And if there was a philosophical issue which was a little difficult, there could be 3 people with ray 3, and they sat there discussing for 1 hour. And the whole class, the whole group were listening. Argument. And finally, after 1 hour, they came to a conclusion. But it was not the conclusion being interesting for them, it was the sort of developing the idea, developing the arguments, and conversing with each other. And it was not so important with the conclusion. Ray number 1 mind would say, the conclusion is there. And that's the importance. But for the ray 3 mind, it's the whole developing of the idea, innovative. Oh, yes. And if you have a friend with a strong Ray 3 who is one of those innovative types, sometimes they can be totally enthusiastic about something which you find, okay, I found this connection, and now if you connect this and that and that, then you have a whole new concept. And you think, okay, and what then? And the next is, how can you know if the concept is true? But the Ray 3 is not so occupied with truth, it's more the idea making. Ray 5 would say, okay, let's get down to the crucial logic and truth about it. So Ray 3, innovative, but somewhat floating in the air.
Asger has a cooperation with a three-way person, and when we have been out traveling, and he has called us on the phone answer, we could be sure that he talked the whole answer out. He just talked, arguing with himself. We can also, yes, yeah, perhaps so. So he has taken all the tape to an end before he comes to what he was asking Asger about, or some date or for the next meeting and what they could discuss in that meeting, and so on and so on. We also have a seminar where we have, for some years ago, there were 2-3 rays with. And it was an education, so people get to know them. So every time they began to tell, not to ask a question, but more to add something for the lesson, then people began to read what they don't have written in their papers and began to, because they know it takes so long time before they come to the conclusion. They just talk so long time. They are talkers.
They take their time.
Sometimes it's boring to hear because they think in the same time they are talking. They are talking, they are thinking. They are telling loud.
Just be aware also, even if we talk about Ray 3 as working with ideas, many of them are very clever business people. Who are the most clever business people? Ray 3 and Ray 7. And if you have that combination, you can really work with money and manifest.
One thing is also that I think because the third ray is not so persistent to find the ultimate truth, it can also make a little too fast conclusions, and then also have an inconsistency, saying one in the other context and the other in the other context. But the fifth ray, I think, wants to find always the logic. The same analogy has to apply in all the contexts.
Yeah, and also it's like the floating. One idea there, and in a way everything can be true, and it's not it's not so important for a third ray person. Overview. I used my overview at university, so it was. I didn't need to study a lot of details. I could go into the overview line and then easily pass the exams by overview. So when I was examined, I just gave the overview, and then the professor thought that I knew all the details. But you cheat as a third rate person, because you just stay with the overview, and that's very good at certain exams. Okay, how are you as a partner? We have a little of the same, not so much coziness, stay at home, etc. They are very active, and they, I think sometimes they even make the family into a project. Now, what should we do in this weekend? So, activity, restlessness. Couldn't you just stay at home? Let's look at TV. Oh, let's look at what have we got. No, it's too boring. And love affair. I go to my computer, or I will just study a book. So, people on other rays except ray number 1. They would tend to say such a life will be too much stress. But a third ray person can live with stress pretty easily. They would get stressed the other way. If they have no job, if they have to sit silently, they will get stressed. Do you understand what I mean? It's very important. A ray 3 following the flow will need a lot of activity. A ray 2 following the flow will need a lot of rest. So here they are very opposite.
So they should not be partners.
Yeah. No, they can be partners, but they need to understand each other. So a ray 3 can speed up and still sort of follow the flow. But again, we have some of those ray 3 types. Speeding up just means that they are active, but not a lot of product comes out. Then we also have the issue with ray 3. It can be difficult to make decisions on one way, and then on the other way, and then on the third way, and we can say one may include one, etc., etc., etc. In one organization, I met a lawyer who was a typical ray 3, and he was very good, very thorough. I just wondered, how can he ever gain his wages? Because he spends 8 hours to make a conclusion, where a first ray person or a first ray mind would make a conclusion within half an hour. But he wants to be absolutely sure, and then look at that, and then look at that, and then look at that. And if it is a lawyer in a firm, and you need to pay, we had a tax case in the Golden Circle. The leader of the lawyer firm, I knew him a little, so I choose him. And he had a lot of first-rate clarity. So, okay, he would charge maybe 180 euros per hour, but he was swift and clear. Boing, boing, boing. So it's worth it. Then he gave the case to a third-rate lawyer who got the same 180 euros an hour. And a third-rate lawyer should only have 50 euros an hour. Because the conclusion might be the same, but he or she spends a lot of time to be sure on that way and on the other hand, and blah, 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 blah. And who pays? You. No. Okay. Then again, we take these rays as if it's the only ray, but you can have a combination which counterweight what I'm saying here. Third ray person, how do they live? There is a certain style. You do invest some of your mind into it. You may even be a business person, so you buy a lot of things, but careful buying still. It's not a lot of nitty-gritty, that's ray number 4, but carefully choose, and it can be a wealthy home, and you consider your choices for a long time. And how do you shop? Slow, thorough investigation, looking at the package. Oh, maybe I should take that. No, have you seen that? No, I go back to that. And a third choice. Consider the price, consider the quality, be sure what you do. Decisions can be hard. Then we have what is the difficulties, indecisiveness, restless activity, overactivity, shy from conflicts. You don't go into conflicts. A lot of words for some of them. If they are brilliant, they love to shine. We have some TV stars in Denmark who are typical third-rate people. A lot of words, a lot of activity, and they would like to be in the light. Brilliance, to be brilliant, that can be one of the third-ray dweller on the thresholds. So let's meditate. Attune. Ray number 3. Imagine this ray full of activity, the ray of active intelligence, the enjoyment of creativity. Imagine this ray coming into your mind and into your personality. Activity, drive for activity. Looking around, being curious about the world, being curious about thinking about the world. How is this? How is that? Putting many questions, answering them yourself. The mind is increasing its activity. Imagine that your attention is turning towards the world with curiosity, with creativity, with activity. And the whole of the personality enjoys to be active, even physical active. Turning in one direction, following that path. New ideas, maybe working with money, maybe with philosophy, maybe with discovery, science, understanding. Feel the joy of activity and creativity of the third ray. Expansive mind, curious mind. Working with putting puzzles together, how to understand this, how to understand that. To which degree do you recognize the active intelligence and innovative tendency of ray number 3? Now look at how it can be displayed in an everyday life. Maybe studying newspapers, following what happens in the human civilization. Working with idea making, innovation. Enjoying to understand, enjoying to put puzzles together. A little restless, but if you follow the flow, not stressed. Ever active, physically, emotionally, and mentally. Enjoying activity. Outward going, not so meditative. And if meditative, it has to do with vibrations, inner work, grail work. How to change presence to doing. Active meditation. And look at your family life, being occupied with projects, activity, not too cozy, sitting at home. Can you recognize being indecisive? Talking, trying to convey your ideas to others, maybe even overwhelming them with your words and ideas, trying to convince them of your point of view. To which degree do you recognize the third ray expressed in your personality? Now the attunement is over, ray number 3 is over. And we will make a break. So tomorrow we will go through ray 4, 5, 6 and 7.